Being very entitled and controlling, narcissists have no difficulty stepping all over your personal boundaries. So that's why I put together an extensive video class called This Is Me. It has 25 videos, written documents, guided questions. I'm going to teach you how to have healthy boundaries. There's a link below, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. You know that when you have had an ongoing relationship with a narcissist, ultimately you're going to have a lot of strain and tension that arises that you're going to have to come to terms with. Now, I want to kind of turn the tables a little bit and ask the question, well, does the narcissist ever express their own sense of misery? Do they have their regrets? Do they experience emotional pain and sorrow and confusion relative to their interactions with the world in front of them? And the answer is, oh yeah, in fact, a whole lot. In fact, when they have their misery and they have conflicts, inevitably it's going to come out with a large amount of anger, and it's not going to take a whole lot of guessing to figure out where they're coming from. Now, the question is, when narcissists get into this sense that says, life isn't working out very well with me, what kind of coping mechanisms do they tend to employ? What kind of strategies do they get into so that they can help smooth over some of the strain and tension that they feel on the inside? Now, I'm going to go ahead and let you know, first of all, they don't tend to think of it very deeply like what I want to do with you. They tend to go into autopilot mode, and they tend to draw upon habits that they've used before. Now, the crazy thing is they're going to use techniques, if you will, or strategies that they've used many, many times before, and it doesn't work, but they're going to continue to use it anyway. It's like, well, I've tried these things about 792 different times, and it hadn't worked yet. But this next one, number 793, maybe this is going to be the one, but they don't have good reasoning, and they don't have good insight regarding that. Now, as a therapist, whenever I would work with individuals, one of the first things that I would try to discern with that person is the question, who's responsible for what? And when we deal with a narcissist, obviously, we want to ask them the question, who's responsible for what? And right there, they already have a great deal of difficulty in coming to terms with that. Let me walk you through a multitude of strategies, if you will, that narcissists will use as coping mechanisms when they feel miserable. And as I do, you might want to just kind of put a little check next to each one of these, which one of these apply to you. And then I'm going to help you understand one of the conundrums that I feel as a therapist when I'm dealing with something like this. Now, as we look at the strategies that narcissists use, right at the top of the list, and this is going to come as no shock, is they look for someone to blame or circumstances to blame. Sometimes what they blame is their immediate set of circumstances or people. If you hadn't done this, or if I hadn't been in this set of circumstances, or if I had more money, or if you were less argumentative, or whatever it might be, then none of this would have happened. And so they look to someone out there that they can put the burden onto. Sometimes they become historical, and they'll say, well, yeah, I know that something really went wrong now, and a lot of it may have had to do with my family of origin or what you did in the past that bothered me, but we've never been able to get through, and so they may bring up some things from history, but one way or another, they're gonna question who's to blame out there whose name is not me, and that's what they go toward. Then, in addition, another primary coping skill that or mechanism they'll use, if you want to call it that, is they put pressure on you to change. And you'll hear a whole lot of you should have, you ought to, you'd better, you can't anymore, and why did you do this? And so they make sure that they let them know, I'm putting you in charge of making me feel better. What are you going to do next? Now, in addition, when they have some of their own misery, they rage. It's like they think, if I can come on angry enough, and if I can register enough strong displeasure and make you know how miserable I am, then magically you're going to want to change. And you're going to want to say, okay, I'm so sorry. And you're going to change all of your ways, and they can kick back and think, well, that strategy worked. But they'll rage, or if it's not the loud rage, then they'll go into a very, very stubborn passive aggressiveness with you and hold you in contempt, etc. That somehow thinking that's going to solve my problem, and it's crazy making when they do that. Other times, as part of them trying to soothe over their miserable feelings, they'll go into high rationalization mode and justifying. They try to come up with explanations. Well, this would never have happened if it weren't for this, or you need to understand that the context of what I was saying was such and such, and they go into spin cycle. Another strategy, if you will, that they'll use is they'll try to find a complaint buddy. Sometimes they'll get on the phone, or they'll go eat lunch with, or someone that they can just sit down and say, let me tell you about the misery that I have in my life right now. And that person over there just nodding their head, and then they can come back and say, see, my friend agrees with me. Now I feel a lot better. And so if they can have a complaint buddy they unload on, that's nice. Sometimes they might express a form of confession to you, particularly if their contribution to the problem is so out there and egregious that they just can't run away from it. So they might say something like, okay, yeah, I shouldn't have said it this way, or I know that I made a mistake here. And then the thinking is, well, now that I've said that, get off my back. But that's as far as they go. Other times, another attack that they might use is they may actually seek counseling. You might think, well, no, you'll never see them in a counseling office, and a lot of them won't. But as a therapist, I'd not have it happen where plenty of times they would show up. And typically what happens is, as they talk about their problems, it's more of that complaint mindset to me, the therapist. Let me tell you why my life is so problematic, and then it's all the other everybody else's fault. And then second, what they'll do is when they go into counseling, they'll try to enlist the therapist as an ally, and eventually they can say, well, even Dr. So-and-so says this, and so that's part of their coping, if you will. Another coping skill that they have is they'll employ self-soothing efforts. Now, this can be alcohol or pot or food or retail therapy. Sometimes they immerse themselves into self-indulgent pleasures, whether it's just getting on their gaming devices and just kind of zoning out with that, or going all in on their exercising, or binge TV, or just going out for a ride on their motorcycle, or whatever that might be. Other times, part of their coping skill might be something like they'll just withdraw. They'll become avoidant, and they'll pout, and they'll fume. And mostly they fume. Sometimes they can go into major rebellion. For example, so many times when I've had talked with individuals, narcissistic individuals who've had an extramarital affair, it's like, well, this would never have happened if my spouse had done this differently. Or they can go into the rebellion might be serious partying, or just being very defiant in their non-cooperation with you. Sometimes they'll just immerse themselves in work and just get away from me. In projects they like to do, just go away, leave me alone. Now, do you know what's missing with all of these things that I just mentioned? And this is that conundrum that I was alluding to just a few minutes ago. Whenever narcissists have their own state of misery, what they don't do is they don't go down to the inside of their own character and ask, what is it at my character level that I need to address? Who am I? What's the meaning of all of my emotion? What's the meaning of all of my anger and all of my disruptive features? All of these other people out there, they may have something going on with me, but what's going on at the core of my character that I need to address? And one of the biggest questions that I have when I'm working with individuals is, how do you coach people to have a better sense of essence? Essence is just who you are, the truth about who you are down at the personal identity level. What does it mean to be me? What is my true nature? And it comes down to one thing. If a narcissist truly wants to employ good coping skills, they'll realize that narcissism is an essence issue. You can't align anything on the outside in a successful way until you have your inside successfully managed. And that's where their coping mechanism completely falls apart. For them to heal and for them to make adjustments and to overcome their misery, they have to ask things like, well, or say things like, well, I'd like to embrace all the non-narcissistic ingredients. Like, I'd like to be an unselfish person. What does that mean? I'd like to have self-restraint in the way that I engage with people. I truly don't want to continue being a controlling person because I know I don't like being controlled. What would that be like? And how would I adjust my thinking on that? I want to lean into love. What does that mean? And it's more than just being admired and adored, but what does it mean for me to say I want to lean into love? Or I understand that I'm flawed just as other people are flawed. What would it mean if we were to have a mutual acceptance and safeness with one another so that flawed character that we bring is something that we can encourage one another in? They don't think like that whatsoever. Or I realize that forcing other people to change on my behalf is not really the way to go. What would it look like if I became the model for changing? And I'll start with me. Or I want to grow, I want to learn, I want to have accountability with other individuals on a lifelong basis, and I want to put myself in position for that to happen. What would that mean? Narcissists might say, well, yeah, actually that looks kind of good. And sometimes they may actually say, yeah, I'll go into that. But ultimately, when they don't get the results they want from the outside world, they quit because addressing their interior is so counterintuitive to them. Most of them, if they were to hear what I just said about looking at their essence and changing at that level, would say, nah, that's for the rest of you weaklings. I don't do that. You need to change, and they go back to all the stuff that doesn't work. So narcissists perpetuate their tensions because they just keep going back to all of these strategies that are going to guarantee failure, which is why you hear people like me say you need to know what you're up against. You need to adjust your expectations accordingly and then adjust who you are in relation to them with the realization they're probably not going to accompany you in true growth. And I hope this gives you some real insight with respect to what you're dealing with. If you've not already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. We're going to keep more videos coming to you. I hope there's a cumulative effect that's beneficial for you. Many times when you go through something like this, you think, I sure could use somebody that could walk me through this, a therapist. And if that's the case, please know that I've been sponsored for years by the people at BetterHelp.com. It's so beneficial when you have somebody that says, I want to know you, I want to help unpack this with you. How can we make that happen and to actually go through the process? It can be so refreshing and healing to have that person in your life. So go through the link that we have at the bottom of or underneath our video here and get the help that you need. Likewise, I put together courses. They're like signing up for online classes. They're very extensive in the information. Each course has at least 25 videos. Each video has written handouts and then guided questions. We have Ready, Set, Connect about making good connections. This is me about your boundaries, free to be established, or finding yourself despite the controllers. I also have my webinars that I produce, which are 90-minute presentations of a different nature from the actual classes. And in addition, we have in our website, we have access to my podcast and articles and my books, plenty of resources. Narcissists will feel pain. They'll feel miserable. And they say, oh, I've got my coping skills. And then they'll go to all that stuff that doesn't work. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm on to that. I'm hoping that you can say, well, I want to examine my essence. And I want to make sure that I'm right at that place first. And then it's going to inform what I'm going to look like on the outside. That's something a narcissist can't do. But I'm hoping that you can commit yourself in a lifelong effort to being that kind of person. And in doing so, I hope it allows you, at least separate from them, to find your place of peace.